Most people spend their lives trying to become better. Better habits, better discipline, better thinking. But very few people ever learn how to become whole. Because there's a part of you that does not respond to motivation. It does not respond to discipline. And it does not disappear just because you ignore it. The part of you that gets angry, the part that feels envy, the part that wants control, the part that reacts before you think. Most people try to suppress that part. They try to outgrow it, outwork it, out-discipline it. But according to the psychologist Carl Jung, that approach creates a deeper problem, because what you suppress does not disappear. It becomes unconscious, and what becomes unconscious begins to control you. The real path to psychological strength is not suppression. It's something far more difficult. It's integration. And almost no one ever learns how to do it. Most people confuse control with suppression. They believe that if they don't express certain thoughts or emotions, they've mastered them. But suppression is not control. Suppression is avoidance. Imagine holding a ball underwater. As long as you keep pressure on it, it stays below the surface. But the moment your grip weakens, it rises back up. Sometimes with more force than before. This is exactly how suppressed traits behave in the mind. A person may suppress anger for years, telling themselves they are calm, patient, and composed. But underneath pressure, that anger resurfaces suddenly and instantly. But it's not because it was created in that moment, but because it was never understood, never processed, only pushed down. This is why people often feel confused by their own reactions. They say things like, "That's not who I am." But in reality, it is part of who you are. It's just the part that you refuse to acknowledge. And what remains unacknowledged remains uncontrolled. What integration actually means. Integration does not mean becoming your shadow. It does not mean acting on every impulse. It does not mean embracing destructive behavior. Integration means something far more precise. It means becoming aware of your full psychological range without being controlled by it. Psychological maturity comes from recognizing that you are capable of both constructive and destructive behavior, strength and weakness, discipline and chaos, compassion and aggression. And instead of denying one side, you learn how to hold both without losing control. For example, instead of suppressing anger, you understand it. You recognize when it appears, what triggers it, what it's trying to communicate, and then you decide how to respond. That is integration. The emotion exists, but it no longer controls your behavior. One of the biggest misconceptions about the shadow is that it is purely negative. But in reality, the shadow, it contains a massive amount of untapped energy. Traits like aggression becomes assertiveness. Pride becomes self-respect. Envy becomes direction. Desire for control, it becomes leadership. When these traits are unconscious, they create problems. But when they are integrated, they become tools. This is why some of the most effective individuals are not people who eliminated their darker traits, but people who understand and redirected them. They understood. They didn't remove intensity. They learned how to aim it. Why most people never integrate? Integration is difficult. Not because it's complex, but because it requires honesty most people avoid. You have to admit things about yourself that don't fit your identity. You have to recognize impulses you don't feel proud of. You have to accept that you are more complex than the image you present to the world. This creates internal tension because the ego wants consistency. It wants a clean story. I'm a good person. I'm not like that. But integration, it interrupts that story. It forces you to expand your identity. And most people would rather protect that identity than evolve it. Integration is not a single decision. It's a sequence, a process you move through, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but always in this order. Awareness. Notice the reaction without immediately acting on it. This is the first interruption of the pattern. Instead of reacting automatically, you pause just long enough to observe what's happening internally. The emotion is there. The impulse is there. But now you're watching it. That small gap between stimulus and response is where control starts to form. Ownership. Acknowledge this exists within me. Not deflection, not justification, not blame. Just recognition. Even if the trigger came from someone else, the reaction belongs to you. This step is uncomfortable for most people because it removes the illusion that everything is external. But without ownership, there is no integration. Understanding. Ask what triggered this. What does it represent? Now you begin to study the reaction instead of identifying with it. Is it insecurity? Is it a need for control? Is it suppressed anger? Is it something you've been avoiding? You're not judging it, you're mapping it. Because once you understand the pattern, it stops feeling random. Separation. Recognize. Feeling doesn't equal action. This is where most people fail. They assume that because they feel something, they have to act on it. But that's not true. You can feel anger without becoming aggressive. You can feel envy without becoming resentful. You can feel the impulse without becoming the impulse. This creates space. In that space, you gain choice. Direction. Choose how to use the energy consciously. Every reaction carries energy. Integration is not about suppressing that energy. It's about redirecting it. Anger can become clarity. Aggression can become assertiveness. Envy can become direction. Instead of letting the reaction control you, you decide where that energy goes. This is where control begins. Not by eliminating parts of yourself, but by understanding them well enough to use them with precision. At a certain point, integration stops feeling like effort and starts becoming identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who is only calm, or only disciplined, or only positive. You begin to see yourself as someone who contains range. And because you understand that range, you are no longer controlled by it. You can access intensity when needed, restraint when needed, focus when needed. That is psychological flexibility. And that's where real power comes from. Most people spend their lives trying to become a better version of who they already are. But real transformation doesn't come from improvement. It comes from integration. Because the parts of you that you ignore will always influence you. But the parts of you that you understand become tools. The shadow is not something you eliminate. It's something you learn to use. This is results, where insight becomes control, and control becomes transformation.